Mr. Hale is nearly 40, a tight-skinned, eager-eyed intellectual. This is a beloved errand for him. On being called here to ascertain witchcraft, he felt the pride of the specialist whose unique knowledge has at last been publicly called for. Like almost all men of learning, he spent a good deal of his time pondering the invisible world, especially since he had himself encountered a witch in his parish not long before. That woman, however, turned into a mere pest under his searching scrutiny, and the child she had allegedly been afflicting recovered her normal behavior after Hale had given her his kindness and a few days of rest in his own house. However, that experience never raised a doubt in his mind as to the reality of the underworld or the existence of Lucifer's many-faced lieutenants. And his belief is not to his discredit. Better minds than Hale's were, and still are, convinced that there is a society of spirits beyond our ken. One cannot help noting that one of his lines has never yet raised a laugh in any audience that has seen this play. It is his assurance that, quote, "We cannot look to superstition in this. The devil is precise." Evidently, we are not quite certain, even now, whether diabolism is holy and not to be scoffed at, and it is no accident that we should be so bemused. Like Reverend Hale and the others on this stage, we conceive the devil as a necessary part of a respectable view of cosmology. Ours is a divided empire in which certain ideas and emotions and actions are of God, and their opposites are of Lucifer. It is as impossible for most men to conceive of a morality without sin as of an earth without sky. Since 1692, a great but superficial change has wiped out God's beard and the devil's horns, but the world is still gripped between two diametrically opposed absolutes. The concept of unity, in which positive and negative are attributes of the same force, in which good and evil are relative, ever-changing, and always joined to the same phenomenon, such a concept is still reserved to the physical sciences and to the few who have grasped the history of ideas. When it is recalled that until the Christian era the underworld was never regarded as a hostile area, that all gods were useful and essentially friendly to man, despite occasional lapses, when we see the steady and methodical inculcation into humanity of the idea of man's worthlessness until redeemed, the necessity of the devil may become evident as a weapon designed and used time and time again in every age to whip men into a surrender to a particular church or church state. Our difficulty in believing the, for want of a better word, political inspiration of the devil is due in great part to the fact that he is called up and damned not only by our social antagonists, but by our own side, whatever it may be. The Catholic Church, through its Inquisition, is famous for cultivating Lucifer as the arch-fiend, but the Church's enemies relied no less upon the old boy to keep the human mind enthralled. Luther was himself accused of alliance with hell, and he in turn accused his enemies. To complicate matters further, he believed that he had had contact with the devil and had argued theology with him. I am not surprised at this, for at my own university, a professor of history, a Lutheran by the way, used to assemble his graduate students, draw the shades, and commune in the classroom with Erasmus. He was never, to my knowledge, officially scoffed at for this, the reason being that the university officials, like most of us, are the children of a history which still sucks at the devil's teats. At this writing, only England has held back before the temptations of contemporary diabolism. In the countries of the communist ideology, all resistance of any import is linked to the total malign capitalist succubi, and in America, any man who is not reactionary in his views is open to the charge of alliance with the Red Hell. Political opposition, thereby, is given an inhumane overlay, which then justifies the abrogation of all normally applied customs of civilized intercourse. A political policy is equated with moral right, and opposition to it with diabolical malevolence. Once such an equation is effectively made, society becomes a congery of plots and counterplots, and the main role of government changes from that of the arbiter to that of the scourge of God. The results of this process are no different now from what they ever were, except sometimes in the degree of cruelty inflicted, and not always even in that department. Normally, the actions and deeds of a man were all that society felt comfortable in judging. The secret intent of an action was left to the ministers, priests, and rabbis to deal with. When diabolism rises, however, actions are the least important manifests of the true nature of a man. The devil, as Reverend Hale said, is a wily one, and, until an hour before he fell, even God thought him beautiful in heaven. The analogy, however, seems to falter when one considers that, while there were no witches then, there are communists and capitalists now, and in each camp there is certain proof that spies of each side are at work undermining the other. But this is a snobbish objection and not at all warranted by the facts. I have no doubt that people were communing with and even worshiping the devil in Salem. And if the whole truth could be known in this case, as it is in others, we should discover a regular and conventionalized propitiation of the dark spirit. One certain evidence of this is the confession of Tituba, the slave of Reverend Paris, and another is the behavior of the children, who were known to have indulged in sorceries with her. There are accounts of similar clatches in Europe, where the daughters of the towns would assemble at night and, sometimes with fetishes, sometimes with a selected young man, give themselves to love, with some bastardly results. The Church, sharp-eyed as it must be when God's long dead are brought to life, condemned these orgies as witchcraft and interrupted them, rightly, as a resurgence of the Dionysic forces it had crushed long before. Sex, sin, and the devil were early linked, and so they continued to be in Salem, and are today. From all accounts, there are no more puritanical morals in the world than those enforced by the communists in Russia, where women's fashions, for instance, are as prudent and all-covering as any American Baptist would desire. The divorce laws lay a tremendous responsibility on the father for the care of his children. Even the laxity of divorce regulations in the early years of the Revolution was undoubtedly a revulsion from the 19th century Victorian immobility of marriage and the consequent hypocrisy that developed from it. If for no other reasons, a state so powerful, so jealous of the uniformity of its citizens, cannot long tolerate the atomization of the family. And yet, in American eyes at least, there remains the conviction that the Russian attitude toward women is lascivious. It is the devil working again, just as he is working within the Slav who is shocked at the very idea of a woman's disrobing herself in a burlesque show. Our opposites are always robed in sexual sin. And it is from this unconscious conviction that demonology gains both its attractive sensuality and its capacity to infuriate and frighten. Coming into Salem now, Reverend Hale conceives of himself much as a young doctor on his first call. His painfully acquired armory of symptoms, catchwords, and diagnostic procedures are now to be put to use at last. The road from Beverly is unusually busy this morning, and he has passed 100 rumors that make him smile at the ignorance of the yeomanry in his most precise science. He feels himself allied with the best minds of Europe, kings, philosophers, scientists, and ecclesiasts of all churches. His goal is light, goodness, and its preservation, and he knows the exaltation of the blessed whose intelligence, sharpened by minute examinations of enormous tracts, is finally called upon to face what may be a bloody fight with the fiend himself.